Lance Hall here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. Happy to welcome Jamie Lailey, bassist vocalist for the London, UK-based band City of Thieves. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Album Beast Reality coming out October 12th on Frontiers Records. You can pre-order now. I have heard a copy of it. Fantastic stuff, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I loved the analogy that you put up on your Facebook page about the cost of the album being about the same as 2 pints of beer.
Yeah.
That was brilliant, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, it was just like, I think it's funny when, you see like record sales as a whole are down. I get I get that the way we kind of consume music and stuff is changing, and like streaming is becoming a big thing, or buying individual tracks is becoming a big thing. But especially in London, like the price of beer is so high that, no one thinks twice about spending, 10 or 15 pounds on 3 pints of beer or whatever.
Right.
But, they would sort of go, oh, £10 for an album. Do I want it? Do I need it? Blah, blah. And it's just like the kind of relative values get skewed, I think. So I just wanted to try and put it in perspective a bit.
And I think it's an excellent one. I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Now, you guys right now, I was a little confused. I tried to do some research, couldn't find a whole ton about you guys, but I found some. You're a three-piece right now. At one point, you were a four-piece, though?
Correct, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We started out as, so the background to it is me and Will and Ben, who are the guys who are still in the band now, we've been together for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And we in a previous incarnation, we were a band called Four Wheel Drive.
Okay.
And so people who can't wait to, check out the album, there's lots of music out there by Four Wheel Drive if you kind of want a taste of what we've done before. Mm-hmm. And that's all still available. But we basically had a couple of different members come in and out on second guitar for various reasons. And they're still, really close friends of the band and stuff like that. So we're still really close. And one guy moved to Norway. Okay. So that was obviously kind of unworkable.
Yeah.
And the other one, he became a tour manager, and he basically was working all the time, and so that was also unworkable. So rather than, and then we did get another guy in to do some live stuff. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't a guitar player on the album. He's on one track actually, and then he was in for the live stuff, and then that he was living up in Liverpool, which is obviously a fair way away from London. Not in US terms, I suppose. It's not that far away, really. But it just became tricky, and we decided that rather than kind of try and keep filling this void, that it was getting harder and harder to find people that really fit in, because people were then always fighting our history with each other, and people started to feel like, I guess it was awkward for them to come into a group of guys who had 10 years history and they had like 10 minutes history, and they didn't really know where they stood. So we kind of thought, well, let's try this as a three-piece, and we kind of rejigged a couple of things, tried a few effects and bit of technology here and there to try and figure out how we could put it all off live. And we sort of thought, actually, do you know what? We sound a bit more modern, we sound a bit more aggressive like this, so let's just keep this going for a while and see how we feel with it.
Cool. I'll tell you, I was listening to this, I listened to it once, and then I listened to it again, both times through headphones, and like, with each listen, I was picking up on more and more. For a three-piece, you guys have a big sound on this album. Big sound.
Yeah, thank you. We just kind of experimented a lot with, like a lot of the, actually interestingly, a lot of the songs were written, I guess like all the artistic input really was actually the three of us who were left anyway. Yeah. So a lot of it was, like when I'm writing with Ben, we started to play around with guitar parts and spreads and different octaves and things and stuff like that. So we were layering up a lot of stuff even in the demos that we wanted to put across on the record. So there's a lot of like alternate tunings and different ideas going on simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was like, and our job now is to pull that off live. So, I've kind of, especially with the bass filling a lot of the space, I've got like a a bass whammy pedal that's run up an octave that goes through a JCM 900 guitar amp. So I've got like a line I can cut in and out. There's just a distorted bass line doubling all the riffs and stuff that sounds just like an extra guitar on stage, and I can kind of cut it in and out as I want to.
Very cool.
And stuff like so. There's a lot of stuff I'm doing to kind of compensate for that live, but just to make sure that we can kind of put that kind of sonically across.
Now, I want to get back to the album for a second, but since you brought up live, I got to ask you this question, and I've asked a few people who I've interviewed that play bass and sing, you know, and front the band. Is it difficult to lay down that solid backbeat that you have to have on bass, being in tune with the drummer, but yet keep the energy up of the singing and the front man, you know?
Yeah.
Is that a tough job, or can you sort of like compartmentalize things, or?
I think that's a really good question. I think that when I started, I always wanted to do both of those things, and I kind of describe it like I must be slightly schizophrenic, because to want to kind of do a role like bass and a role like front in the band, there's obviously something wrong with my head somewhere that I can't settle for either one of those two things on its own. So to start off, it was like it was a matter of learning to compartmentalize things, and then gradually as it's progressed. So I used to write bass lines and then write lyrics, and then it would be my problem to figure out how I would put those two things together. And I used to have to spend time working through it on my own to get the coordination right. But latterly, like the more I've done it, the less I've had to worry about it. So I kind of now know where my kind of balance is. So I'll write things, and I kind of won't have to give them tons of thought to convert them to being able to do them simultaneously. Yeah. And it will just kind of work out. So sometimes something like Reality Bites is a song, for example, the way that the vocal crosses the bass line in the verses was really tricky, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I kind of avoided trying to learn it for a long time until I absolutely had to, because I thought it was going to be a nightmare. But it actually kind of came together really easily, and I was surprised, and I was like, well, if I can do this, then I don't have to worry too much anymore. So it is tricky, though. I mean, like, your relationship with the drummer's weird, because he spends the whole show looking at your ass, doesn't he? Rather than, like, eyeballing it. So,
and, I mean, I'm just thinking, do you ever get, like, a surge of adrenaline? You get going fast, and, you know, all of a sudden Will's behind you saying, slow down, you know?
But you know, actually with drummers, I think that works both ways. I think sometimes as a singer, especially in the early days, I'd be the one turning around to him screaming, slow down, I've got to fucking sing this. Like, sorry, I shouldn't swear.
No, that's fine, that's fine. We're internet, so this is free. So,
okay. Yeah, so I'd turn around and be like, I used to say to him, you try singing it and playing it at that speed, you know, like, and so we had to, but that's better now. Like, we embrace things like, you know, using a click and stuff now that we didn't used to, and it just helps stop everyone having a click, because at the end of the day, your body clock can be all over the place. Sure. You can be feeling time in different ways. As you use a click, you know, it's never an argument to have after the show as to who was out of time or not. He said, you know, because maybe I'm feeling it fast one day, maybe the bass player is feeling it fast the next day, and you know, you can argue forever about who's feeling the time wrong. So just get a click and avoid that argument. Yeah. So I think it's like, you know, that helps as well. But it's weird because you strike up different you know, like when I'm playing bass but singing, you know, Ben is almost kind of the go-between. And as a guitar player, he's so strong rhythmically in terms of his groove that he'll act physically like the bass player, but while playing guitar. Yeah. And then when he's soloing, I'll turn around and I'll be the bass player for a minute. And so you kind of get these different feels depending on which one of us is locked in with Will at that exact moment. So it kind of has a really nice ebb and flow to it. Cool. But we're all taking on multiple roles all the time, I suppose.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. You worked with Toby Jepson, he produces the album, of course, from Wayward Sons and The Answer. Then you had Chris Coulter, Mike Frazier doing the mix, Simon Francis on the mastering. How'd you meet up with all these guys?
Yeah, actually, when you put it like that, that's a lot of people, isn't it? It kind of, so we were looking to make an album, and we started writing all the songs, and we tried out a couple of different producers, and one of the guys we we also trialed out Pedro Ferreira, who'd done The Darkness's first album.
Mm-hmm.
And then our manager had been talking to one of his business partners, who's one of the biggest booking agents in Europe. And he represented Toby Jepson on a management level. It's already confusing anyway. Yeah. So he said, look, I think Toby should work with these boys and see how they get on. And Toby was like, he kind of got involved in it just because he really liked. Actually, he got involved because his wife really liked the band.
Okay.
And he was like, actually, do you know what? Women are never wrong when it comes to music. So the fact that my wife liked you was, like he said, I really kind of got into you after that, thinking, because I'd left the CD, like, he was super busy. Like, I left the CD in my car and she drove my car and came back and went, that band in your car, you have to work with them. So we actually... And he was like, oh, I'd sort of forgotten I had to listen to that. So he went back to it and was like, actually, oh, yeah, I really like these guys. But the thing with him that was great was he worked with us on a kind of consulting level,
mm-hmm.
Just for free. Like he had no investment in the record,
right.
But he was listening to all the songs and going, I love this, change that. What about if you take a different approach lyrically here and blah, blah, blah. And before we knew it, we had like a whole bunch of songs and we were like, right, well, this is the guy, man. He's given us like all this time and all this advice and has a really solid plan for how it's going to sound. So we got into the studio with him and he kind of worked with us on a production level. He never wanted to get involved with the songwriting per se because he didn't want to kind of tread on anyone's toes, and he felt like our writing process was really strong. So he was just helping us kind of trim the fat off all the songs, if you like, just making sure that nothing was longer than it needed to be. So he kind of brought that kind of pop sensibility, which we kind of really liked, because music changes, right? And it's not the era now for like 20-minute guitar solos and 3.5-minute intros before the vocals come in and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it is about, you got to grab people's attention these days. So I don't think there's one song on the album. I think the longest song on the album is like 3 minutes 40, and on average they're about 3 minutes 15 or something.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, quick hitters.
Yeah, and I think you kind of have to be. But what Toby was great at was making sure that we fit all of our musical ideas in, so we didn't feel like we'd left any of the journey out, but we made sure that you got from A to B more quickly. So that means that we felt like you could listen to a song and feel like you've been listening to it for longer, because it takes you a load of different places.
Yeah.
But then, actually at the end of it, it's all done and dusted in 3 minutes. And I think you have to cater to that now, because that's the way that we're consuming music.
Yeah. Yeah. Very short attention spans out here now, which,
But that's the same all over the place, right?
Yeah, with everything.
It's easy to sort of say things were better when and all that kind of thing, but the reality is that's where we are. So you got to cater to it. And actually it's a challenge. When you think about when rock music started, when your limitation technology-wise was you couldn't fit more than 2.5 minutes on a vinyl.
Right.
That was why a pop song was 2.5 minutes. And actually now you can record a 37-hour linear prog masterpiece, and actually the limitation is no one can be asked to listen to it.
Exactly.
You're back to 2.5 minutes being the goal.
Yeah, I mean, you go back and you listen to like Elvis or Chuck Berry, all those early hits were never more than 2.5 minutes, No,
you couldn't get it on a 7-inch, right?
Exactly.
Like, that was your limitation, and now there are no limitations. The limitation is our attention span.
Yeah.
So obviously that's still the limit we're working with, really.
Yeah. I do like the fact you had a dozen songs on this. You're putting it out on CD and vinyl, I noticed, which is very cool. Yeah. Once again, the album the band is called City of Thieves. The album is called Beast Reality, coming out on Frontiers Records October 12th. You've done one video that I've seen for Reality Bites. I gotta ask, after looking in the shopping cart where you guys were preparing for that video, did you do that on a serious sugar high or what?
Yeah, well, I think we...
There was a lot of chocolate in there.
Yeah, it's just... with that one, I think we'd sat down and so the guys who made that video, they're really, really good friends of ours, and we've worked with them before, like a lot in our previous incarnation, and we'd done our previous video for Buzzed Up City with them as well. They're just really, really good friends.
This was Dan and Dan, right?
Dan and Dan, exactly, from Luke TV. Yeah, Luke TV. They're just like such cool guys, and they do a lot of they do a lot of corporate videos as well as music stuff, and I think as filmmakers they love the opportunity to get involved in something artistic and creative, and the fact that we came to them with a budget from the record company to make a video.
Nice.
We sat down and we just went to the pub, as all good things start in the pub, and we had a few drinks and we got talking, and we sort of realized that we all loved the same movies, and we kind of made the video an attempt to cram in references and scenes and parallels with as many of our favorite films as we could.
Sure.
And so there's like a lot of nods to different things in there, like predominantly kind of things like The Matrix. There's a little nod to stuff like Taxi Driver in there, and Gamer with Gerard Butler, and
Nice.
it's just 12 Monkeys and Source Code, just stuff that we just got talking, and like we had like these massive hours of discussion about all these different things going on, and crammed it into 3 minutes, and everyone just sort of watched it and went, what the fuck? So we wanted to make it something that, at the very least, like visually, something that people would go, well, I've obviously missed something here, I better watch that again.
Yeah.
And so to be something that was visually arresting, so that people would go back and go, right, I'm going to check that out again and see what's going on.
Yeah, there is a lot to see in that video. You also gave some props to Lydia and Merida for hanging out all the hours you did that video?
Yeah, so that's Lydia's my wife,
Okay.
and Marta is Will's partner.
Excellent.
And they kind of put up with all of our shit for 2 days solid, because they were just running around. They were taking like behind the scenes pictures and videos and stuff for us to put together like a making of, which is still to come. And we're hopefully in that we're going to explain a bit more about what's actually going on in the video. But yeah, they hung out, they made food, they got drinks, they took all the footage behind the scenes and the pictures, and they just did anything that needed doing for us for that whole time. Obviously, these days being in a band, you can't just be in a band anymore. Basically, you have to do loads of other stuff, and it involves sacrifices on everybody's part, including your partners and families and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we had to give props to them for putting up with that.
Very cool. Do you have any other videos in mind for any other songs coming out, or is this going to be the only one?
No, we are going to do more. I think the next ones that Frontiers want to release are going to have some lyric videos and stuff like that.
Yep.
We have the Buzzed Up City video, which is more of just a live shoot, because it was our first video as City of Thieves, and we wanted people to kind of get a reveal on the band.
Right.
So we wanted people to see it as a live thing. After Reality Bites, I think I really loved that, because I just love the idea of sitting down and writing a concept and having the budget to go and film it.
Yeah.
So I think that Frontiers will allow us to do that again, probably in the new year. So I don't know what song that's going to be for. We're going to have to talk to them about what the song is, and then we're going to have to decide whether we've got a concept that fits that, or we've got a particular kind of filming idea that we wanted to do. I think it's just great to kind of get involved on an acting side as well. I really enjoyed that.
Very cool.
Yeah. You look at bands like the Foo Fighters, right? And all of their music videos, the band are always the protagonists in the video.
Yeah.
And I really like that approach, because I thought, well, why not have that where we can all be all the characters all the time? And I'd love to do that again. But as of yet, I don't know what song for or what the concept would be. But yeah, hopefully.
Very cool. Glad to talk to you about a few of the songs on this album. I took some notes on a few of them. First off, I'm sort of like, I love to listen to a song. I'm always listening for like a hit and stuff, but I'm also a guitar solo guy. And I'll tell you, Ben's guitar on this album, his tone is just phenomenal. I mean, I couldn't get over that. I mean, it's just... So the two songs that immediately jumped out when we were Lay Me to Waste and Right to Silence. When he solos in those two songs, it's like, I about was, ready to just drop my pants. It was unreal.
He is like, Ben is a unique boy. He is a very unique boy. He is the most interesting person I've ever met, I think. And we've known each other for getting on for 12 years now, I think. We've been working together solidly for about 10 of those. And the thing you have to realize about Ben is that a lot of his playing doesn't come from having really heard other people do stuff, right? So I remember the funniest conversation I ever had with Ben, and I swear to you this is true. I swear to you this is true. We were hanging out in a bar one night. I was doing some depping for a band, a local band, just on a cover circuit, and I was playing bass for them. And we got talking after he'd come along one night, and we got talking after the show, and with the singer from the band. The singer from the band was a massive Led Zeppelin fan, and she was talking about, like you do with someone like Led Zeppelin, you talk about them in first name terms. You go, yeah, Jimmy and Robert, and Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and blah, 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 blah. And we were talking, and Ben just turned around to me and went, sorry, who the fuck are you guys talking about? And I said, Jimmy Page. And he went, who? I went, what? And he went, and I'd known him for like 2-3 years at this point. I was like, dude, are you joking? You're like, no. What? I said, Led Zeppelin. He went, oh, right. And then that was it. But so like when you consider, and this isn't like, that wasn't a conversation to make him look dumb.
Right.
He's one of the smartest guys I know. But that makes his playing more remarkable because like he's not necessarily dug all his licks out of listening to the same music that everyone else digs theirs out of.
Right. And he's true to his own self.
Yeah, exactly. I think he kind of heard his favorite, I think, and I'm talking on his behalf here, but one of his favorite, I think, his Bible of guitar playing is Stevie Ray Vaughan live at the El Mocambo in, was it 88, 89, maybe? And that's it. Like he watched that and went, "This is what music should be." And then he basically then went and just started writing, and playing and doing his thing. And between Stevie Ray Vaughan and Malcolm Young, I don't think he's ever given really any particular credence to any other guitar player. He's just sort of taken that and gone, right, that's me. And then he's taken it, to ridiculous levels. And I remember we did a show over here for the US Air Force. We did there's a US Air Force base in Suffolk, which is sort of northeast of, like quite a way northeast of London. And we played, they had a Harley Owners group show, and we came out and we played for all these Hog chapter, like US Air Force guys. Yeah. And so they at the end of the show, one of the guys came up to me and he went, like, man, like, was Ben born in Mississippi or what? He said, where did this guy come from? He said, I've never seen anyone that's not American that understands blues in that way. Yeah. And I was just like, I said, I don't know. He's just one of those guys. I said, it came out of thin air, and he's just got that feel. And like he's definitely the most one of the most unique guitar players I've ever heard. Yeah. Yeah. And he's just a genius for coming up with stuff like that, And something like "Lay Me to Waste" you mentioned, like that's him. He just decided. We started playing with different tunings and stuff like that, and that main riff in that just came out. I had the chorus part, but that main sort of like pile driving riff, he just went sort of we heard like one or two Audio Slave songs we were listening to, and he went, right, listen to this, and he just played the riff, and I went, right, sorted, we've got the verse, like.
Now, when he does these solos, though, does he just go for it and do it like in one take, or is he one of these guys that does like 2 or 3 and then takes bits and pieces from each one, or?
That's really interesting. For the most part, his best stuff is always off the cuff, and then he might then sort of say that's what I want to go for, but I want to tidy it up. But in the studio, with like Toby would really push him. So sometimes in the demo stages we had maybe tidied things up too much, and so one of the great things Toby did was go, no, I don't want it. I want it raw. Like I want it really raw. So he'd send Ben back in and go take some of the melody out of it and put something nasty back in. And he'd be like, go and play aggressively. Don't play it too melodically and don't play, overly sweet. Go and play nasty. And so so you mentioned Right to Silence, right? Solo. Yeah. So in the studio where we were recording, so every song apart from that one, Ben used his Explorer. But on the solo for that tune, the guy who owned the studio had a Malcolm Young Gretsch Jet Firebird hanging on the wall.
Oh,
and
wow.
Ben was like, I've always wanted to play one of these. And he plugged it in, and he just took to it. And for that song, that guitar plugged through his rig was just what he used. So the solo on that song was then him playing the Gretsch Jet Firebird,
Wow.
which he'd always kind of coveted. And with that, he hadn't pre-planned anything because he'd never played that guitar. So that solo was literally his reaction to having that guitar in his hands. And that was why it's so cool, because he just played it off the cuff by using that guitar.
That's amazing. That's amazing. the other tune,
so that's the story.
The other tune I really liked was "Born to Be Great." To me, that song, I love the little bit of the breakdown in the middle. To me, that song sounded like something, you know, the band Sweet. If you took Sweet and like put them on steroids, I think he would come out with something like "Born to Be Great." I mean, there's a lot of comparison with you guys to, like, you know, the AC/DC and Airborne and stuff like that. But I heard a lot of like you say, this bluesy stuff. I heard, you know, like some Stones, Faces, you know, stuff like that in this playing as well. And definitely in that one, "Born to Be Great," I heard, to my ears, a Sweet influence. You know, to me, it had a very sweet, you know, like Box on the Run, that type of sweet stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've you know, like you hear stuff all over the place, and you put these ideas to, you know, you suddenly kind of start putting ideas in funny places and stuff like that. By the time you're writing a song, you might grab something, and, you know, like, just it ends up somewhere and it reminds someone of something. And I think there's just so many. What we tried to do with this record in general was to not try and overthink stuff. Like, just if a song was there and it worked, like, don't be restrictive about what we put on there or how we wrote it or how we recorded it. So, you know, there's loads of influences in there, especially, like, also some more modern ones in terms of, like, the way we structure the guitar part, stuff like, you know, people like Blackstone Cherry or Nickelback or Velvet Revolver, and that kind of more gnarly approach. But then, you know, where that breakdown comes in, you're talking about, it's got that kind of, that finger pick kind of, that middle section, that would just be Ben like, oh, I think this is going to sound cool here, because it's just the same four chords going through. And Ben's view to that was like, well, rather than make it just sound like the same four chords, how can I kind of turn that into something different that still kind of contains that chorus progression,
right? So
we can bring the vocals in over the top. So yeah, we kind of, you know, I think we got so many influences that, like you said, we're massive Stones fans, and like, because of the heaviness of the album, maybe that doesn't shine through as clearly as it used to do when we wrote songs earlier on, because we're going from over market. But that influence is definitely still there, you know. Absolutely. So it's great when people can hear it. Actually, I'm really like talking to people that can hear what's going on in there and see more to it.
Definitely, and I get you on the modern stuff too, because on that same song, "Born to Be Great," you know, while I heard some Sweet, when it came to the chorus, I heard a little bit of like Offspring, you know.
Oh, really?
It almost sounded a little bit like "Pretty Fly for a White Guy," you know.
I get you. Yeah.
Same sort of cadence in the chorus when it came to that, but you know, but it's good. I mean, you know, it's good. I'm not knocking it at all.
No, that's not. But you have to kind of try and. There's no point repackaging all the shit that everyone else has ever heard. Right. You have to try and find new ways of doing stuff, or add. You have to, but it's embracing technology and embracing trends and embracing writing styles that aren't necessarily from the era that you grew up listening to.
Yeah. The last one I wanted to talk to you about, and I sort of do this. This is my own thing. I always listen, in particular, to the very last song on each album, because in my analogy, I'm like, are they trying as hard on the last song as they did on the first song? You know?
Okay.
And in Something or Nothing, it's the longest song on the album, went 4 minutes, and while it's not a ballad, to me there was sort of like a wistfulness in it, a melancholiness, even though you were still cranking.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that one?
I can, yeah. So that was, so we talked briefly about Toby's involvement earlier on, and he was pushing us to try and, he was sort of saying, you know, bands like Cinderella, he was talking about, what the name was the name of that song? I can't remember now.
Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, maybe?
What was that, sorry?
Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone?
You might be, it's off that album. It is off that album. It might not be that one exactly, but yeah, it's something off that record.
Yeah.
And he was just like, say, where's your one of these kind of thing? And this is where he started talking about co-writing a bit. He was like, maybe we can do that. And then we kind of came up with Born to Be Great and Something and Nothing. Both came at this how they were written. And Born to Be Great was predominantly mine, and Something and Nothing was predominantly Ben's. And we had this. Ben had sent me. He'd sent me the demo that he'd recorded, like all the backing track, and he'd sort of like put a skeleton vocal on, and he sent me the backing track and went, "Can you do something with this?" And I kind of listened to it, put my take on the vocals on there, and sent it back to him. And then we lost it because we weren't confident about putting it on the record. It was quite a lot softer back then as well. And then Toby heard it, and he was like, "Look, dude, you have to put this on the album, but you have to figure out how you're going to make this really rip. Like, we have to make sure it's still got balls and put that into there." So a lot of the kind of the way that we use riffs to tie the chord progression together in the chorus, it was Toby's idea to put them there, but he was like, it's your job to figure out how it happens. So you're right that the song's more melancholy, I guess because it's a more melancholy subject, but we wanted to kind of make it about something that people could take their own inference from. Because obviously we wanted to leave it a little bit ambiguous, but also I think a bit hopeful at the same time. Like, it's not completely wistful. It's a bit, it has that element to it, but it's also got a kind of hopefulness about it, and optimism.
Yes.
So we wanted to kind of make it introspective, but without being, like you say, it's not a ballad per se, but it's kind of ballady. It's a bit kind of like imagine like Foo Fighters' Best of You type thing. Yeah. It's more like that vibe rather than a pure ballad, because it's so easy, overdone to just write a pure ballad about something. But you can still be emotional without kind of going down that route the whole time.
I'm thinking the Cinderella tune you might have been thinking of was Coming Home. It's kind of like that. It starts off kind of acoustic-y and then it goes harder.
Yeah.
Very cool. Excellent. Good
Definitely.
stuff.
I think it was just go for that kind of, get something more introspective. A Nicowetter, a Nicowetter of a song. But yeah, so that was the story behind that.
Excellent. Now, we've talked about Ben. We've talked about your approach to things. Where does Will play into all this? We got to give the drummer just a little bit of time here.
Definitely. I mean, like, man, Will is a beast. Like, he's an animal, and he's also like a metronomic animal as well. And he at a time when, like, he could have walked into basically any band that he wanted to, and he chose to join us back in the, like, we'd literally done about 3 or 4 gigs, and he joined us, and he's like our filter, right? He's super important, because although Ben and I write the majority of the songs in terms of actually putting the content together, if it doesn't get past Will, it doesn't get to anybody else. So he's the one that then sifts out, once the demos are finished, he's the guy with the balls big enough to say to us, that isn't good enough, or I don't like that, or I don't think that's going to work. And we'll have to go, okay, fine. And we might go and rewrite something because Will said so. Or if it gets past him, then it gets to a producer. But it doesn't go further if it doesn't get through him first. And then obviously, in terms of them putting that into the band, we all write very, very skeleton drum parts, because that we write by kind of programming drums and making like a mini production of what we think the song will be like. But we try not to produce the drum side, because we want him to have his say on it. And actually in the recording process, Toby went harder on Will than he went on anybody else. And Will just consistently rose. So like the drum part on Animal, the kind of it's the double bass drum pattern, but it's not super fast. It's that kind of jogging speed. Yeah. And it's that kind of Young Lust style, Joey Kramer style feel. Yeah. And it was just, Toby sprung it on Will, went, do this, and thinking that Will would struggle with it or might not be able to do it. And Will just like ate it straight away. He was like, there, bang, and he had it. And he was the thing in that process was, Toby made Will think about every single fill that he played. He stopped him being too reactionary, because like in the past we were so heavily a live band that a lot of what Will and I would do would be reactionary to each other. So Phil's would be like these blasting rolls around the kit, and it would be make loads of noise and blah blah blah. And Toby made him refine himself to think about, like, why are you putting that fill there? What is that fill? What is it going to achieve? And he made Will really compose his drum part for each track.
Yeah.
So as a result, I think Will thought a lot more musically about it after, as well as kind of being physically put through his paces.
Sure.
But I've never met someone that could blow the bottom skin out of a snare drum as often as he can.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm glad you brought up Animal too. That was another one that I love. That song just freaking cranks. That was the note I put beside it. Freaking cranks, It's
gotta be good if you can write that about it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Been chatting with Jamie Lailey here, and let's discuss with Lance Hall. He is the bassist, lead singer for the London-based band City of Thieves. Their album Beast Reality coming out October 12th on Frontiers Records. Jamie, I always like to end with just some fun questions. I'm hoping these are questions you've never even been asked before.
Fire away. You've set the bar high now.
If you could go back in time and eat one of your mom's home-cooked meals, what would you choose?
Okay, so that would be so Ben lived with me for years, right? And we lived at home with my parents when the band started out, and before we'd go to shows, my mum would just cook for the whole band.
Sure.
And Ben always called it industrial cooking. So it would be one of my mum's industrial cooking meals would be like her spaghetti bolognese, probably pre-gig, load up, go off and play, and tear the roof off.
Very cool. Do you believe in ghosts?
No, I don't. No, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So once in a while, I get somebody that'll tell me a story, a thing they have. But if you don't, that's fine as well. Given your choice of household chores, would you choose the dishes or the laundry?
Dishes.
Dishes?
I don't know even why I said that, but dishes, because that's sort of my job at home.
All right. Are you generally late, early, or on time?
Late.
Late. If you could blink chronically or just a little?
If I could what, sorry?
Are you
late. No, I'm late. I'm late to the idea that I've now developed my own definition of late, which is more than half an hour after you said you'd be somewhere is late. But anywhere between on time and half an hour late is on time.
Very cool. Would you rather be stranded on a deserted desert island alone or with someone who never stops talking?
Someone who never stops talking, definitely.
All right. Favorite toy growing up as a child?
Wow. Jeez, I don't even know. What would it be? That's put me on the spot. Do you know what came into my head? First thing came in, my Bucky O'Hare toys. I can't believe I said that.
Yeah, well, hey, this is where we find out.
Remember that show?
What's that?
Do you remember that show, Captain Bucky O'Hare, the Green Rabbit, that was a spaceship pilot?
Vaguely.
It was about that was a proper early 90s cartoon, that one.
Vaguely.
But the toys were cool. I just remember wanting to own every single toy in that series.
Last one, and this is the one we usually have the most fun with. If they were to make a movie of your life, what actor would you have play you in the movie?
Oh, wow.
And it's your movie, your life. You can choose whoever you want.
Geez. But the thing is, I'm 6'5", right? So I'm thinking instantly, like, it has to be representative. So, Vince Vaughn with a wig on? Fuck knows. I don't know.
Very cool. Very cool. Future plans for the band. Obviously, you're going to tour.
Yes, we are. We have an announcement coming tomorrow, which unfortunately, without being a dick, I'm just not allowed to say right now.
No,
but in
that's
about
fine.
12 hours' time, we are. So it's going to be UK based. We want to do some stuff in Europe later next year, some festivals and stuff too. The touring's interesting now because we have to balance it with everything else, because obviously we've all got lives and mortgages and jobs and children and wives and all that kind of thing. So everything has to be well chosen and balanced and whatever. bucket list thing would be to come over to the States and do some shows, but obviously that's not the easiest thing in the world to get sorted. But if we can sort it, then that would be like a dream.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Can find you guys on social media. You're on what? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, and you've also got your website.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yeah, all of that. cityofthieves.london is the website, and all our socials are from there. I think most of the socials are at Thieves_UK for the Insta, Twitter, and Facebook, and YouTube.
Perfect. Once again, the band is called City of Thieves. The album Beast Reality, out October 12th on Frontiers Records. You can pre-order it now. Been chatting with Jamie Lailey, bassist singer for the band, tonight here in Let's Discuss with Lance Hull. Jamie, it's coming up on past midnight over there. I thank you very much for your time. I hope you had as good a time as I did.
I did. Thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks for having us. Thanks for the recognition. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care, and best of luck going forward.
Cheers, man. Thank you. You too.
Cheers.